My name is Michael Marquez, and today I will be your THOT thought leader. I'd like to begin by thanking our partners over at Beef Healthcare and Jacked Apps for supporting us in curating this event today. Y'all, we're gonna do an icebreaker. So we have a game at Deviant. It's another one of our programs. It's called Keep It 100. And I actually have the beta version here on my phone because we do have an app coming out soon. And so we're gonna play it, all of us. So it's very simple how you play it. I need everybody to raise one hand and show all 5 fingers, right? If you've ever played Never Have I Ever, you know how this is about to work. So what we need is for all 5 fingers to be visible. What I'm going to do is read off a list of Never Have I Ever questions. If you have done the deed that I mentioned, you put a finger down. Everyone, this is a great opportunity for us to undo shame and get to know the folks on the stage as well as everyone around us. So, the first question is, never have I ever had a threesome. For some folks, that's childish. Some people may still have all 5 fingers out. Y'all ready for the next one? All right, and just so you know, the game is called Keep It 100. Y'all cannot lie, okay? We're gonna trust these answers. We're in a safe space. All right, next. Never have I ever bottom shamed or joked about someone for bottoming. Never have I ever brought a significant other home for the holidays. If you have done it, put it in. Y'all ready for this next one? Never have I ever hooked up without a condom, not knowing the other person's STI status. Y'all ready for this next one? Never have I ever rejected a kiss in public for fear of my safety. All right. Some people about to get out on this one. Never have I ever popped a pill in the club before. to 100. It is available at deviant.live. Again, it's www.deviant.live. There's a section on there that says play, and you can purchase the game for the 100 there. And just as in the game, as soon as the first person is out, they get the next question. I was out, but I'm asking questions. So, without further ado, we're going to get to these questions. And OBO, I have this one for you first. Guys, please feel free to reintroduce yourselves before you begin answering your questions. OBO, the question I have for you, as we are on the subject matter of shame, as many of us are Black queer folks in this room, Black in general, and even allies, and we know that shame is typically started earlier on in life. It's taught to us early on in life. Can you tell us of a moment that you remember shame being taught to you, and who that was that taught it to you?
Yeah, I'm OBO, a queer content creator. Check me out on all platforms, YouTube and all. But for me, I think for community-wise, right? I think a lot of times we equate masculine presenting things with straight people and femme presenting things with queer people. And it doesn't always work in our younger years, right? So those of us who like sports, those of us who were in fraternities, those of us who did what was quote unquote to be masculine activity, found ourselves in spaces where people who spewed out a bunch of hatred and homophobia. And so for me, I was told very young a bunch of things, right? I was told that I wouldn't get hired if my sexuality was in the forefront of things, and that's not true. I was told that I wouldn't make the line for those of us who went to college. I was told all these different things. I think at the core, what really rocked me was the lack of representation. You know, it's hard to be what you can't see, and I never got to see myself. I never saw me on TV, I never saw me in common spaces, I just never got to see myself. And so for me, it kind of told me that if I don't see it, I probably shouldn't want to be it. And so from that point on, I found myself suppressing self so often until I got older and was able to have autonomy and make my own money and make my own friendships and then find spaces like this full of Black men who are comfortable with themselves. And so for me, like I said, there was a lot of moments in which shame was brought on by family, people who I thought loved me, and so I internalized a lot of that shame as love, right? I thought that people who told me not to do things were protecting me, and in turn, they were harming me. And so for me, there was a lot of moments in which people just had bad information.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Larry, you are one of our few panelists up here who is married. We know that as we internalize the shame that OBO was just telling us about from an early age, that shame can show up in our love lives and how we decide to show affection to our partners, how we're even able to show up authentically. How has shame shown up in your love life, if it ever has?
Yes, I'm Larry Carter. So shame has showed up in so many different ways. Even before I was married, like I was single for years because I didn't want to connect with someone because I was ashamed to claim someone publicly. Even when we first got engaged, it was like in 2011, and he was like, "Are you going to update your Facebook status?" And that was a part for me. It's like, oh, I can't reject someone I love at the same time as loving them, and I feel like that shows up in our relationship over and over, even when we got to the point where he was being vulnerable with me, and I rejected his vulnerability because of the shame that I felt from my past. And I think that keeps us separate sometimes from the people we love the most, is the fear of rejection, the fear of what people will say and how people will treat you in the world. And I think it makes it hard sometimes to be vulnerable with another person when you've been hiding, just like Obio was just saying, you hide most of your life to survive. So now you're in this relationship and they're asking you to be transparent and be open and be honest. And that's not the easiest thing to do. That's not something that just happens. So I think patience was one of the biggest things that helped me overcome that, and having a patient partner that saw my ugly and saw my shame and saw me at my lowest point, but still stuck around to love me through it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mr. Carter. This question I'm going to leave between the two of you gentlemen to just answer, OBO and Larry. Shame shows up in our lives in a lot of different ways. Can you tell us how you define shame and how it's shown up in your everyday life as a Black queer person?
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes. And I'm sure y'all figured out already I'm working backwards at this point. So shame shows up in our everyday lives in a lot of different ways. Can you tell us how you define shame and also how it's showing up in your everyday life as a Black queer person?
Yeah, so I think I define shame as the rejection of self. You know what I mean? I think for me, a lot of the moments in which I was in shame is when I was rejecting myself. And I think when I was doing that, I kind of leaned on, well, they didn't ask me. Right? Like, I'm not hiding. No one asked me if I was gay in here, so I'm not necessarily like, I'm comfortable-ish, right? But I was setting up my life so no one would ever ask me. I made sure I build my life with all these masculine things and straight people, because for a lot of us, our proximity to masculinity and our proximity to straightness is how we get our value, how we get our respect, how we get love, how we get all these other things. And so, for me, I always say I came out because I got very, very lonely. I was afraid of my straight friends. They kept putting me on with girls. Lord have the mercy. I was like, please. But I couldn't say I don't want her because there's beautiful women. Like, this girl's gorgeous. I can't even say she's unattractive. So I'm like, darn, how am I gonna get out of this one? And so, but I was afraid of gay people because I was like, they'll out me and they'll see my truth. They'll see me for who I really am. And so, for me, it was like I'm spending all my time literally amongst family who are kind of annoying and my TV. And so I was like, okay, let's make a quick choice. Are we gonna be alone for the rest of our lives? Or are we gonna walk in our truth? And for me, it was like, let's go ahead and walk in that truth. And what was funny was, I ended up going to a club in LA. I said, for me, my biggest thing was, let me jump out of something and just go to a place I'm afraid of. I was always afraid of gay people, right? So I go to Trunks in LA. Come on, Trunks. I go to Trunks in LA, and I walked in there, and nobody cared about me. Like, I'm in there, and I'm like, thinking it was gonna be a big, and I'm literally like, dang, nobody cares? Like, nobody, I spent all my life scared of y'all, and nobody's just gonna give me nothing, And so I come back to Atlanta, and I live a little life on 10th and Piedmont for every Sunday. I know. You know what I'm saying? So I was, in the mix. And so for me, it was like making that conscious decision to say, being in shame and existing in shame internally is gonna be a problem, and about creating space, right? I didn't create space for myself, so myself wasn't a safe space. So I had nowhere to go because literally in my body, I was not treating myself well. And so it just came to a point in my life where I was like, listen, let's just be ourselves. And honestly, my life has been way better on the other side of shame than it ever was what I thought was better among straight people, if that makes any sense. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Can you get around the world? I have one more question for OBO and Larry. This question states, socially, shame can cause us to perpetuate false narratives of ourselves, if and when insecurities arise around our realities. We can find ourselves hiding behind our muscles, hypermasculinity, money, status, or designer clothes and labels. And as we build this armor to hide our insecurities, we may often clash and bang into others in our community who are doing the very same thing. Can you share how you've broken through insecurities to build community with others in ways you believe others can do the same?
Yeah, I take that personally. I feel like, when I talked about this before we started, there is privilege that people have naturally. And taking your pick, first of all, you have to accept that you have privilege. One, my husband helped me realize that on our first date, he was just like, listen, me and my friends are feminine, and sometimes we get loud. If that's not okay with you, then I'm not the person for you.
I know that's right.
And that, to me, it shifted. That's how I knew he was the one for me, because he challenged my thinking. And I wanted to be better in receiving people, and that's what I try to do in the world, is challenge my friends. I challenge spaces I go into where people are not safe, to create safe spaces, because I know, like he told me, I have straight privilege. When I walk in a room, people assume I'm straight, though I'm not. So when I'm in those spaces, I have to advocate for my family members who can't make it into those spaces and make sure it's safe for them. Same thing amongst ourselves is like accepting each other for who we are. You don't have to be nasty. I asked my friend, why do we get dressed up to walk around the club and not speak to anybody or be rude to each other? It's not necessary. Like, we can love each other.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Larry. You got your round of applause, so I don't have to ask for it. And that's also for your husband and challenging you. I think that was remarkable. And listening to you, I was reminded of One of when Obio actually said on our last week's call about how we use masculinity as currency in this community and how toxic that is. But also there was a saying I read about how easy it is for us to identify who's got their foot on our necks. You know, we're black, we can look at white folks and be like, sick of you. We're queer, we can look at straight folks and be like, sick of you. But it's so hard sometimes for us to look down and see whose necks we have our feet on. So, you know, I love to hear that you are doing that work within yourself and actively within the community, creating safe spaces for those you love. So we've talked about how shame shows up in our lives at an early age. We talked about how it can show up in our love lives and even how it shows up in community. Mr. Michael Hurd, I know you're someone with a religious background, but I also know you're someone to be sexually and socially liberated. How did you free your mind, your life, and the way that you love from those deep-rooted rules of the church?
Wow. Okay, so let me ask this question real quick. How many of you will have a church background or you are involved in church? Okay, so then you'll be able to totally relate to what I'm saying. Number one, I will say in this process, I lost so many people out of my life. My life has been very public. Most of you all may know of me or followed me for a while. So I lost a lot of people. But in losing a lot of people, I found me. And it was hurtful and it was hard because I was never good at sports. I'm tall, but everybody thinks I play basketball, and I don't. I was never good at too many things in school, but church was the place where I thrived. You give me a mic, I can set a church on fire. You give me an opportunity, I can speak and touch somebody in a certain way. And so my whole entire existence has been built on the fact that I was raised to be this preacher, this pastor, this man of God that people in my family expected me to be. And so if anyone has been involved in Pentecostalism like me, and I come from the Churches of God in Christ, I'm very proud about that. But at the same time, I also know that in many circles, people who live lies get rewarded. But people who tell the truth is ostracized. And when you're raised in an environment where you're taught to lie, right? So people can judge you and people can say things about you and they can say, oh, you're this and that, but you don't know what it's like to be raised in an atmosphere where you're rewarded for lying. And then when you decide to tell the truth, then you are not only ostracized by the people that were supposed to love you, protect you, celebrate you, honor you, you then get thrown into a community full of many times broken people that will ostracize you even more because you decide to live the truth that they live in secret. And so it's been a very difficult journey. I will say this, it's been a very difficult journey. But for me, in order to overcome religion, I had to break away from everything that I knew to be true. You all see me wilding out now, but what you don't know is that I never had a 20s. I never had a 30s. My whole entire life and existence has been built for me living for other people. But when I decided to live for myself and tell the truth and live an honest life, that's when I feel like I ran into probably the most challenges. But I'll tell you this, for all of the dragging I've ever experienced on social media, for all of the names that I have ever been called, for every time somebody done something that was hurtful and I cried in secret and y'all never saw it, I would go through that a million times just to be sitting in the place that I'm sitting right now, because I'm able to live my truth, I'm able to walk with my head held high, and I'm determined that at the end of my life, if y'all can't say nothing else, y'all gonna say that nigga told the truth.
And that's on period. Thank you for that, Michael. Folks, if you do have any questions, if you could just raise your hands. We have 2 or 3 people that are working the program today. If y'all could just take note of them, because I do want to pass them the mic. I know we have 2 more questions to give to the panelists, and then we want to open up the floor. Yes, you can. Michael, as you were speaking, man, first off, thank you so much for sharing. It was so endearing to hear your truth and truths. I think it does so much for many of us to inspire us to do the same. I was reminded as you were talking about the same loneliness that Obio mentioned earlier. And then you went even more in depth to talk about how you didn't have the 20s and the 30s. And I think of how so many of us as Black and brown queer people specifically in this country at best are being able to be our true selves at 18, maybe. And that, I mean, if you're in Obio's experience in pledging in college, that can't happen until after college. If you're a religious background, that may not happen until after you're no longer dependent on your parents. And so, you know, we have this saying amongst me and my friends, not really a saying, but a terminology, whenever someone's newly coming out, we call them our gabies. Because the truth of the matter is, they're, however old they may be or however much experience they may have had in a previous life, if they're just coming out, they are starting all over again with how to socialize.
Can I piggyback on that? Let me say this. It does look, if you look on the outside, you know, looking into my life, it does look like I'm acting like a 20-year-old. The truth is I probably am a 20-year-old when it comes to my existence. Psychologically, a person can never even fully matriculate or start to evolve until they are living in a place of honesty and truth and safety. And that's what I didn't experience, because although my mother loved me, she loved her God more. Do you understand what I'm saying? And when I say her God, I'm not talking about the universe. I'm talking about what religion told her. And in my family, we will celebrate a murderer before we will celebrate somebody who's gay. And so I never felt safe ever in my life. And so now at 43, I am just now in the last 3 years finally getting the opportunity to find out who I am. And in the process of that, yes, I broke many hearts. I have had many relationships, and God used those relationships to change me, to mature me, to grow me up so that I can see who I really am. And eventually I started to find myself.
Yeah. Amen.
It ain't going nowhere. I'm a preach, but
and that conversation about the roots of religion and what it's done to our community as queer people and also as Black people, and how we can reimagine our lives and ourselves made in the image of God is a whole another installation of this that we must do. Leslie, you are the HBC director at the HRC, otherwise a liaison for promising Black folks in the queer community. What attracted you to this work, and can you share why it's important for your queer people to have safe spaces on campus and in their professional lives?
You would put me after that. I feel like we need to start the pass the collection pledge somewhere. But no, the truth feels good. So that's why I'm sitting here. I was really thinking about a lot. Thank you for the question. So what got me into this work? Somewhat, I feel like I approached that question with this idea that I almost didn't have a choice. I'm first generation college student, and I walk around with this idea of a debt that I have to pay. Now it's an imaginary debt. I am in debt, student loans, but this imaginary debt that there are folks that went before me that paved the way for me that I will never meet. They will never know my name, but I am reaping the benefits of the labor that they laid that I will never be able to repay back. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm reminded of a quote by Martin Luther King, and that is, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty of bad people, but it's the silence over of good people. And I can't sit on the sidelines and watch folks in my community be oppressed, marginalized, and I know I have the words, and I know I work for an organization that have the resources and don't do anything. So that's
so that's the why. And the reason, the rhyme for that reason is this idea that, you know, I'm two-time HBCU graduate, Bowie State and Howard, so any one of those in here. I had a really great college experience, you know, being gay. You know, like being gay at Howard wasn't really a thing for me. Being gay at Bowie State wasn't a thing for me, but that wasn't the reality of so many LGBTQ students at HBCUs across the country. And so it's on me to encourage our institutions and to teach them that marginalizing LGBTQ people on campus, Black folks, is inherently anti-Black. And so we make our HBCUs bastions of whiteness, even when we go around and talk about we're HBCUs. And so, you know, for me, I didn't really have a choice in the matter. Some people can choose to walk the other way, and that's okay too. But I didn't feel like I had a choice.
So now, Leslie, as I heard you talk, some things came to mind. You mentioned that you were a first-generation college student. And I thought about us as a community, and you very specifically, working at the HRCU, the Human Rights Campaign, and knowing that everything that we have as a community, as queer people, was started by a trans woman of color, Marsha P. Johnson, throwing a brick, getting fed up with injustice. And I think of you as, you know, first generation free queer in this country, not having to fear for your life of being who you are. And you mentioned Martin Luther King existing during the same period of time in the 60s and 70s, being fed up and fighting for civil rights. So first off, you know, thank you for the work that you're doing. Secondly, as we reimagine what freedom looks like for us now, that we have these positions, that we're able to sit on stages and gather safely, what do you imagine our future will be like? What future are we creating for future generations of queer, Black, and brown people?
All right, that's a loaded one. Okay. All right, so I appreciate that question though. And this is just my opinion, right? There's a lot of folks in here with opinions of how we can get to where we need to be in terms of liberation. But for me, I think we need to kind of circle the block and get back to community. The one thing that I really appreciate and admire about the 90s for the Black gay community especially was the community that we formed around those that were HIV positive. Our community was decimated by AIDS. And there was a time, my uncle tells me this all the time, where he would, on his lunch break, leave work, go over to a friend's house, make sure they ate, took them lunch, washed them up, put them back in bed, and somebody else would come in the evening and do the same thing and all that sorts. There was a sense of community that I think we have kind of gotten away from. And for a number of different reasons, you know? But I feel like in order for us to truly realize this liberation, or this idea of liberation, we have to care about one another. Like, I mean, full stop. I need to care about how you know, like, and so my granddad told me this before he passed. He was like, because I work at HRC. HRC is a very white organization, if you don't know it. They do me very well, and so I do them back very well. So I'm not gonna, you know. But what he told me was, he said, do you think that white people have your best interest at heart? And he wasn't a racist or anything like that, but it was a thought that he was trying to get me to come to, and that is, if I don't care about my brother, and if I don't have his best interest at heart, how can I expect someone else without the same race or experience or cultural grounding had? And so for me, it's, you know, I try to remove myself from the cosmetic or the aesthetic of being Black and gay, and, you know, being able to afford the things and all that. And just care about people, period. I think we need to get back to that. I think we've lost that a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. We definitely live in a country of individualism. We are like, and it's stemmed from many different reasons, but could talk on a tangent about that another day. I love that you mentioned, how our community was ravaged by AIDS. I also think about the 80s and how we were ravaged as a community by the crack era. And a lot of our core values are actually based in those realities, knowing how Black and Black queer communities very specifically were ravaged by these things. Not at any fault of our own because of the individual, but rather that we didn't have a society there to protect and support us. And so it is up to us as a community to, again, reimagine freedom, let's instill these core values and reimagine how we can take care of one another in community. And as we speak on community, Leon, you gather so much of the community so often. And as we had talked about shame and unpacking it, the reality is that we still carry so much of it with us. And you host the most lit, fun, amazing events that I've been to in New York City. I can't wait for Atlanta to get that soon. That's my plug for you. What experiences have you seen, witnessed, or had in watching us as a community come together with internalized shame?
Well, it's hard because everyone has a story. Like, everyone in this room has a story. And you bring that into a club with music and liquor and wanting to find somebody, and it's great. So it's hard to work out. My first gay club experience was in Atlanta. And I can remember being so, like, my ears were hot. I was just so nervous. And, like, someone's gonna, it was a while ago. But someone's gonna see me or something's gonna happen because I never had any good positive reinforcement about being Black and gay. And then I carried that to New York. So one of my first experiences was going out with a first boyfriend and his friend group. And one of them was trans and we went to a pub. Regular day, regular pub. And we'd been there before, but we had a trans friend with us. And they were like, oh, you can't come in, it's not that kind of day. So I think we take that, and we took it with a grain of salt because it's easy, like we're used to it, but that doesn't mean it's right. So bringing those kind of feelings, we just carry them with us. And so whenever we have parties or whenever we do something for us, that is still there. And I think the way to work around it, we have to realize that. Like, it's sad that we have to be so present in who we are even in fun spaces, but you don't know what you're doing to someone else. So we are a community. I feel like we're a great community. All the best support I get is from Black queer people. I would say I'm privileged enough to spend most of my time around Black queer people. And it's fun, but it's also very, very healing. Like, I never had this positive reinforcement, and it's from people who are my peers. So, usually you get the tap on the back or the nods from people who are older than you, you feel so good about it. But these are people who are just like me and going through the same thing. So that's why I love it. And I think we can be a little more empathetic to people. Like, if you're out on the street, you could hate somebody in here. But if you see them getting gay bashed or something, I know it's hard to put your body in that physical space, but I would hope you would at least yell or make some kind of noise. Because we do need that. We are still like, we're not a monolith. We don't have to love each other. We don't have to love each other or even like each other. But we have to realize that we're all we pretty much have.
Thank you for sharing most of all your heart and hearing even that first experience that you had in going out and how the experience of your trans friend rose your level of empathy and understanding of an experience that was beyond your own. It reminds me of, again, how we in this very particular community, it's so amazing to watch the rest of America, but I'm going to be particularly talking about white America, progress to, care about gay marriage being a thing, but knowing that astronomical rates of homelessness still exist amongst trans people. Knowing that in Black queer communities, we still see our Black, young kids being bashed by their own parents and people that are supposed to protect them to this day. So knowing, what it means to have a space and create a space where you are encouraging that we care about one another, that we love one another. We ain't gotta like you or get along with you or dance with you, but I got your back at the end of the day. I think that is remarkable.
And even in creating spaces, because part of running is a business, like creating space is a business, you do have to earn something from it. But as Black queer people going into a venue, in New York, you can go downtown and you can tell them, oh, I bring this many people out, I've done it for so long. And the last question they're gonna ask you is, well, who's your crowd? Who's the demographic? So there's always that, and it's even like a little bit of shame in me still. They have to say like, oh, you know, it's a black crowd. And like, I guess the terminology downtown would be urban, they would name it urban. And they're like, I'm like, they gay, but they're like, they black though. And then going into Harlem, which I was so shocked by, is you can go to a venue and like, okay, who's the crowd? They're black and they're gay. And I've gotten, oh, we don't want that. But like from working for so long in one spot, the owner would be like, you know, y'all buy so much high-end liquor. Like we saw almost top shelf liquor on your night. We do this and that. But that's not what the bullet was. He told me about the expensive shit today. But they don't, I guess it seems like they don't, I don't know what they think is going to happen. So that's what I'm confused about. Because I do spend so much of my time in the, like, I isolate myself with black and queer people. So when I step out of that, it makes me feel weird. Like I don't know how to. So.
You answered my next question, which was going to be, what does external shame look like for you as somebody who has to create these spaces? But yeah, it's not good to know that you still have to navigate racism and homophobia as you try to create spaces for us. But certainly kudos to you for being a champion and doing that for the community. It's awesome. So folks, without taking any more time, we're going to get ready to wrap up this section and get ready to open up questions. If you have a question, we're going to ask that you raise your hands, but not before I go ahead and just plug that there will certainly be more cocktails and combos on the way. We would love to have you all back. If there's subject matter that you want to hear discussed that is very particular, please feel free to hit us on any facet of social media or in our emails. Our website is www.deviant.live. On there, we'll have Deviant TV coming out soon. Of course, you have the card game to keep it 100, and we'd love to have you all at one of our parties at Deviant events, and this will continue also. So, I know we have one question here. If you do also have a question for any one of our panelists, please raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you.
Mine is really loud. And excuse my voice. So my question was kind of split between OVO and you, Reverend. I think it's really powerful. But I think, and this is like really life changing because this is powerful for me, it could be powerful for somebody else. I find myself stepping in and out of strength of myself, of like me pretty much not giving a fuck about what anybody has to say and just living myself. And you have a special thing that you have to give to people. With that being said, the only way you can even give that is by reaching your highest version. So you have to be set free. But it's hard, like you said. But there is a pinpoint where you did it a little later in life, and no shade to that. But
I'm still fine.
Oh yeah, I know you are. I like to clear up. But I want to be in a space where I don't feel like time is running by. Like OVO, I don't know, but based off of how you speak, you sound like you're already free at a young age. And I think when me seeking God, I'm really confused, or not confused. Yeah, confused. I want to like get where I need to be. So when was it that you said I'm fed up, I'm done? And you was just like, I'm gonna live me. Same thing for me. Like, what was it that pushed you to do that? It's the push that you need. You know? I can't stretch it all the way.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks for the question, bro. I think in the queer space, I think there's this idea that freedom is like this, everybody's gonna love me, I'm gonna be free, and life is gonna be amazing, right? And I think sometimes that freedom can almost be confining, because sometimes when you find your freedom, like you alluded to earlier, you're gonna lose some people. Everybody's not gonna understand. Also, people are gonna criminalize or I'll go criminalize God in some spaces, right? They're gonna act like God is gonna damn you, like God didn't create you, like God doesn't know who you are, like your prayers are not being answered, and all that is false. And so for me, it was more so me understanding who I am for myself. Like really silencing everybody around me and realizing okay, well God, I'm praying to God and things are happening, things are moving, I feel the Spirit of God. And I'm not equating my sexuality to any other sin. That's not how I'm gonna find my truth. It's not a sin to me. I know who God is, and I'm confident in that, And so for me also with freedom, it wasn't so much about me being cool or me being accepted. It was literally about when do I feel well? I think we missed the conversation about wellness in the community, right? When do you feel most excited? When do you feel most happy? Whether that's in your clothes, in your friendships, around family members. Look at me, some family members had to go. If we're being really frank, some cousins, I can't join that conversation. And I don't want to. Certain teachers, certain family members, I couldn't do it. And so honestly, it's gonna come within. But also, and this is the last point, deciding that who you are only has to be affirmed by one person. You. You know what I'm saying? You ain't gotta look for nobody else to affirm what you got going on. If you feel fly, in that moment, guess what you are? If no one comments on that picture, if no one affirms you, if no one says good job, if no females yes girls you are still that thing. You get what I'm saying? I think a lot of us we look for I kind of think it, and if they affirm it, then I can really think it. But nah, when you kind of think it, you know it, because that's you. Period.
I would say my life was so engulfed in church that again, the only day that we did not go to church was Mondays. And that's only if we didn't have revival, right? Every other day I was in church most of my life, 90% of my life. But I'm gonna tell you how the universe really started shifting me. Again, it was through my past relationships. This is one of the reasons why, to this day, I love every last single one of my exes. Because when things would happen, their reaction or whatever would happen would force me, whether it's them going live on whatever, it would force me to have to start looking at myself. And I was like, am I really this type of person? Is this really how I am? Because one thing that religion will do, religion will cause you, a toxic religion, will cause you to start thinking and not seeing what is really there. Right? Right. So, for example, I'm a queer person, right? How many of y'all know queer choir directors? How many of y'all know queer preachers? How many of y'all know queer pastors? But if they ever publicly said it, they would lose everything, right? And then the moment that something happens, like we saw, some years ago, where, a major pastor would get, outed by whoever, then all of a sudden everybody's, oh my God, oh Lord, oh God. But he is the same person that have been praying, preaching, and all of this time. So for me, I feel like it was the universe really using my past relationships to really show me just how jacked up I really was. And I had to get my ass in therapy, right? And when I got into therapy and I started looking at myself, and it's that I'm still on that journey. Yeah.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name's Penelope. My question is for you. I too am come from a PK family. I too everything is church. Faith was my life. I too am non-monogamous and pansexual, and I've gone through this journey and understood. It's been grueling to understand, how to separate myself from so much. And I dwindle it down to shame is what people give me, guilt is what I give myself. And I'm still in the space where I'm trying to figure out how to detach myself from a legacy. It's a legacy, baby.
I already know.
Yeah. How to detach myself from a legacy that still gave me a foundation that I appreciate,
Yes.
that I revere, that I
Yes.
love. And all the work that I've done, and I'm also an ex-evangelist, traveling, speaking, preaching, and being able to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I want to be myself.
Right.
I want to do these things.
Right.
And having to still have that weight of,
Right.
this is who I've come from, this is my bloodline.
Right.
This is how, excuse my language, but fuck what everybody else got to say. This is my family, this is the people who raised me. And how to stand in that. How are you dealing with detaching? Because I've been with the therapy, but I've lost everything. I've lost everything that was everything, but everything ain't everything.
Right.
But what did that look like for you?
Well, I'm still going through that to this day. But let me make this abundantly clear for everybody who is here. I left church, I didn't leave God. My relationship with God is stronger now than what it's ever been. And I don't care, and you all know I do OnlyFans. Everybody knows that, don't act like y'all don't know. I will tell you this, as much as I have tried to show some of y'all the most ratchet, sexually liberated side, people still see God in me. And if I would open up my own, and my partner can tell you this, if I would open up my OnlyFans DM, 90% of them are prayer requests. I'm still, even to this day, people are still asking me, can you pray for me? Can you speak a word to me? So let me say this to you because I know exactly where you are. My last year of preaching, I made over $350,000 just on the road. Just preaching in different churches. It was nothing for me to have a revival and raise $100,000 just in that week. You know what I'm talking about. Because when you're anointed, people give. You know what I'm talking about. So one of the things that I had to do is I had to decide what was more important. Was my truth more important, or was me living this image for people more important? And when I added it up, I realized that I spent my whole life living for people who still hate me anyway. My family is not close to me. They're all preachers. All of them can, y'all, whatever sickness, disease, whatever you have, they can lay hands and you will recover. I have seen it with my own eyes. My family can prophesy your business, tell you what's in your bank account, tell you everything, but what they cannot do is know how to love people unconditionally. Everything comes with a condition because of the simple fact that their God told them what is right and what is wrong. And if you don't go that way, then you don't get a chance to partake in whatever blessing. So for me, I had to make that choice, and I lost all of my family. Now I got some of them back, and my mama, she's slowly making her way. But I had to go through that, and again, therapy was the thing that helped me get through it.
We're going to take this last question.
Oh,
because what we're going to do, we're not ending. What we're going to do is we're going to end up releasing our panelists and allowing you guys to have a few more drinks because I believe we wrap at 9, right? So, question.
Yeah, my name is Devin Barrington Ward, and I had the privilege of being on the ballot with Larry Carter this year. And I just want to really appreciate Deviant. This is amazing. I'm a former president of Impulse Group in DC. And I feel like this was, when we started Impulse Group, this is what we wanted to see, was more of this, so thank you. My question for you, Larry, is because you're on the panel, I want you to share your experience with running for office in Atlanta, this black, queer mecca, but also having to navigate respectability politics, everybody else's expectations, your own skeletons in your closet, those bodies, okay? Those are the things I know I had to navigate because I identify as a black queer man. This is my partner, I'm pansexual, I'm bisexual, I'm with a woman, and there were so many different questions about my relationship and the way that I showed up in the world as a candidate running for office. You were married to a man here in the city of Atlanta. What was that experience like running on the West Side and having to talk to all of these different types of people about who you are?
Well, so it was a full experience. Thank you for that question. But I'm gonna be honest with you, being a black gay man in Atlanta running, I got to meet and see a lot of great things and bring about a change of perspective for some people who see us in a certain way and see us in a very limited view. In my race, anti-LGBT tactics were used against me because we have a lot of older African American people in the district. So a lot of older voters who show up, out of 33,000, about 4,600 showed up. And most of them were older black people. So they made their choice. Okay, it's back. They made their choice, but what I found interesting is, and I'm gonna call it out, I'm gonna be honest, white gay men don't necessarily care about African Americans. And that's just real. I went to Victory Fund. If you're familiar, I was a Victory Fund graduate as a candidate. They endorsed no African American men, gay men in the races. This was the most African American gay men in races in the history of Atlanta, and not one of us got an endorsement. That's ridiculous. When you're raising money on a gay platform and you endorse no gay black men in the city of Atlanta, a question mark goes up, so much so that their board went to a person, an African American on their board, threw up a red flag. And so now that's shifting. The same thing with Georgia Equality. My husband and I stood on the steps of City Hall in 2014 with them. They pushed us forward. They used our black faces to get marriage equality. But when I'm running for office, you won't back me. So you'll back other people who are LGBT long as they look and fit into your box. But we were good enough to stand in the way of danger because gay marriage wasn't legal yet when we got married. So you'll put us in a place of danger, but you won't have our backs. And that's what's happened historically. And that is why I stand up. And I'll definitely, if I'm called to, I'll run again. Because I mean, we have to have our voices at the table because they might be gay like us, but they're not black like us. So our issues are not the same.
Hello, my name is Hakeem, and this question is for the entire panel. So this past weekend, I had a visit from my grandfather and father, and throughout that visit this weekend, I was reminded of moments throughout my childhood of verbal and physical assault. Any time where I exhibited any type of behavior that was not deemed masculine. And now that I'm 29 years old, a large part after that, my grandfather, he spent a large time in prison, and then I lived with my mother away from my father. But now I'm 29 and they want to, have a relationship with their first grandson. And so how have you guys been able to forgive or love these people who have been the #1 contributors to your trauma and to your shame?
I will. I'm still there too. I was at a point where I came out a few years ago, and I'm 35. So I came out at the worst time ever, at my grandfather's funeral. And my mom, you're talking about life at funerals. And she's like, when are you gonna settle down and have kids? And I was like, I want that. But I'm like, this is a great opportunity to say, I'm gay. And I told her, and she's like, oh no. She was disappointed. But I'm looking like, you know what, at the end of my life, and I feel like hopefully at the end of everyone's life, you don't want to be on your deathbed thinking about things you didn't do with a person who you weren't, who you should have been. Because we don't know what happens after this. You're not gonna, as far as we know, you're not gonna come back and get to do it again. So I just like lead with that. You have to, you're born by yourself, you die by yourself, my mother always told me. So you have to, what do you want your life to end up looking like? And live that.
I was just gonna say there's something very powerful about forgiveness, and that's not something that can just be done by a snap of a finger. I think you have to learn to find the sympathy in someone else's story. What helps me forgive my family is the fact that I understand how they were raised. I understand what was put in them. My family doesn't dislike me because they're horrible people. They dislike me because they have been indoctrinated with the fact that I'm Satan or I'm the devil or whatever because I'm queer, okay? So you have to realize that their actions towards you are just a result of the trauma that they experienced themselves.
And really quickly, I just want to say this, you can forgive somebody, but that doesn't mean their proximity to you has to change. You feel me? I think sometimes we think because I forgive you, I have to allow you in, and that's not how the game goes. Because I went through the same thing with my mother, right? She wasn't really active in my life. I think a lot of times for me, especially, my parents haven't had to interact with my sexuality because for them, you're only gay when you have a partner, right? If you're single, you ain't gotta bring no guy home, if you don't wear the things, and they don't have to touch it, but it becomes really apparent when now you got a little boyfriend, and they call him your little friend. No. You're not my little friend. So I think also respectfully checking people so they can know you're not playing about this. Because a lot of times, someone said it earlier, we do sometimes put our gay on and take it off. And so a lot of times when we want to keep it on forever, you have to check folks. I had to tell my sister, he's my little friend, he's my boyfriend, and address him as such, right? And like I say to your parents, I'm not gay on Tuesdays, I'm gay the whole entire week. You know what I mean? So just remember, the proximity, love you, grandpa. Is he gonna be invited to my birthday party? You know what I'm saying? Am I gonna come around? You know what I'm saying? Maybe not. But again, proximity doesn't change because you forgive them. That's all I'm saying.
I just want to say, forgiving yourself and grace for yourself allows you to give grace to others. And when I say that, because sometimes we blame ourselves and we carry this baggage with us internally. I know I did for a long time of just feeling like your disappointments and different things that you create in your head. Those things are not real. You are valuable, you are worthy of love, you are worthy of being here, you are worthy of living a true life.
I'm actually going to respond as well and just say, I definitely can attest to the struggle. I come from a single parent background, who's my father, who was a minister. So very deeply rooted in his church, very deeply rooted in toxic masculinity because I grew up with all brothers. And yeah, definitely have the traumatic backgrounds of homophobia, both in commentary and just all types of harassment. And I have one brother, god brother, who, because he's a god brother, he don't get talked to today. If he was blood, he probably would get talked to, but I have a choice in that matter. To take you to church, one thing that T.D. Jakes said was family are the first folks that God gives us to learn how to love imperfect people. And the power in that is that if we can learn to love imperfect people, then we learn that imperfect us are worthy of love too. And I think that, summarizes, what many folks up here have said. Our family, they're going to be fucked up, to be frank, but so are we. And as we navigate this journey, understanding and learning grace is so important, not just for them, but for ourselves. And to piggyback, last point I'll make is just off of therapy. I don't think that you have to just do it and deal with it. And I don't think you have to be at home fussing and fighting. We deserve to just live free as well. But I do think that therapy can equip you with the tools you need to communicate effectively and teach you how to set boundaries, how to take your time and your space, and when you can actually go and assess and deal with certain things. So certainly wish you all the best. with that. You have a whole community, a room full of people, a world full of people who love you and who are ready to embrace you, so long as you're embracing yourself. And I'm going to ask all the panelists to stand. If y'all can give them a round of applause. Being vulnerable and sharing stories is certainly not easy. So thank every one of you gentlemen for all the work that you're doing in your personal life, for sharing today. We want to again thank our partner, Eve Healthcare and the Jack Lab for supporting us and curating and creating this space. And thank each one of you, the audience, both allies and queer people of color, for coming together and having this dialogue and reimagining what freedom looks like for us. Looking forward to it.
So my favorite part of the conversation tonight was folks living in their truth. Folks came out and addressed shame head on. Many of us are leaving out much better people than we walked in. And so this idea of truth is just ringing really loud for me right now. And so all the panelists, even folks in the audience who asked questions, it all kind of boiled down to that main point. How do you live and breathe and work and operate within your truth? So that was the most powerful, most impactful thing for me tonight.
I'm OBO. It's important to undo shame because so much of you is waiting on the other side of it. Life is waiting for you. Community is waiting for you. Family, friends, love, all the things are waiting for you. Trust me, my life changed tremendously since letting go of shame and doubt and internalized homophobia and all the things. So get on the other side of that shame. Trust me.
So I believe that shame affects us in so many different ways because one of the most damaging ways is that it stops us from living our truth. We don't get an opportunity to be our most authentic selves. We don't get an opportunity to matriculate and evolve in a healthy manner because of the simple fact that we tend to hide and we tend to lie whenever shame is presented. And shame not only promotes inauthenticity, but it also causes us to stay in a shell and it stops us from being able to move forward the way that we should. So that's what shame does within our Black community.
One of the negative impacts of living in shame is you lose yourself. Understanding yourself is one of the best things you can do in life. Shame can cause you to not just reject yourself, but reject the people who love you the most. For myself, giving myself grace and mercy is one of the greatest things I can do because it allowed me to give that same thing to other people and honor people who are living in their truth.
So what impacts does shame have in our everyday lives as queer people? I think that when we live in shame, we make some of the worst decisions for our lives because we don't feel worthy. Living in shame is living in a life where you don't love yourself. And when you don't love yourself, you're reckless. And I guess in the healthcare profession, we do is called making risky, participating in risky behaviors. So undoing shame, we hope to do at Deviant is to teach people to love themselves so they can make better decisions for their lives and to just live happier and healthier lives.
I think to proudly proclaim yourself as a deviant is an exercise in exploration. And I think it's a blessing to be able to explore your personhood in this life.